Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about my engagement with Kim Youngha's fascinating podcast and briefly about the media and information wars and the situation in Ukraine. So before I get to Kim Youngha, let me just say that I had some requests from some of my viewers who are from Russian, whose native language is not English, asking me to produce subtitles in Russian. I am terribly sorry. I'm not going to do that. I often get requests when I do a video in a language other than English from people saying, could you please put up subtitles in English or translate? It's just too much work. I don't have the time. You know, my time is my own. I'm semi-retired, but I have so many things that I want to do. I'm just not going to spend the time to translate or to create subtitles for these videos. I am terribly sorry. I try to speak clearly so that people whose native language is not English will have a chance to kind of try to understand. When I listen or read something in another language, I don't ask for subtitles. I try to download that audio content. In the case of Korean, Kim Youngha's podcast, I actually paid someone to provide a transcript so that I can study and learn from it. I've done that for Romanian in the past. I should add that Kim Youngha's podcast is going into our library at Link. So yeah, I mean, this podcast or this YouTube space is about learning languages. I'm sorry. If I had unlimited resources, I would provide you with subtitles. It's just not going to happen. Sorry. With regard to some of the comments from some Russians, and they were supported with, thumbs up, to the effect that, I shouldn't listen to some of the sort of independent news sources in Russia, like Kanal Dozht, which has now been shut down, and that I should listen to, what's it called, the Voice of Russia, or whatever it's called. Let me just say that I have nothing but the utmost respect for the independent media in Russia. I think they are very courageous. I think it's very courageous to be considered a traitor. And I think one of the comments was that Kanal Dozht are traitors and they lie. I think that's extremely important. In Russia today, according to a survey that I heard, 70 or 80% of the people, if not more, support the government in what they're doing in the Crimea. And so to stand up at that time and say, no, I don't think that's correct, takes a lot of courage. It's not unlike the situation when George Bush the Younger invaded Iraq, and there was like 60-70% support in the US, and apparently the media also was like, according to one survey, 70% of the media was pro-Iraq. Now, to be fair, George Bush was a little smarter than Putin because he managed to get 20 countries alongside. Unfortunately for Russia, they've got nobody alongside, not even Kazakhstan. However, the principle is the same. Lots of euphoria, support, media in the United States was influenced by the whatever information they were fed by the US military, US government. However, a year or two later, a majority of Americans thought the war was a mistake, and a majority of the media had turned against the war. But the difficult thing is to be against these kinds of actions, to suggest, different points of view. Let's consider what we're doing. To do that at a time of this sort of national euphoria. Again, I was listening to Echo Moskvy. They interviewed a Russian who is the editor or the local representative for The Economist, and he was reminding us that in 1914, the support for Russia's involvement in the First World War was even higher than it is today. And yet this euphoria passed fairly quickly. So who knows what's going to happen? But I support, and I think the fact that in Russia they are closing down independent media is very unfortunate for Russia, because I know that journalists are just as incompetent as any other group of people. You find incompetence everywhere. And whenever I read an article about something that I'm very familiar with, I realize just how poorly informed or how prejudiced the reporter often is. But the greater the variety of news sources, the better. So, for example, the American media might have been 70% in favor of George Bush in whenever it was, 2003, but the British media was not, for example, or the French media, or the Spanish media. So the greater the variety of media sources that you can access, the more likely you're going to get some sense of what's really happening. So I just want to comment, don't tell me that Canal d'Orsht is a traitor, unpatriotic lie. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. They may not be right. They may be inaccurate. Any news source can be inaccurate, can be biased. Therefore, you need a variety of news sources. And what's happening in Russia today is that everything is controlled by the government, and news and information has become a weapon in a sort of a virtual war. So I consider that very unfortunate. I'm sorry if that annoys my Russian listeners. They have a different opinion. They're welcome to express the opinion here in their comments. Getting back to Kim Youngha, it's a fascinating podcast because he talks about reading. He talks about the interchange between authors and their readers. He talks about a particular book which was meant to be read out loud, which was more common some centuries ago, that only a few people could read, so books were read out loud to other people. He talks about podcasts, how it enables him to communicate sort of asynchronously with people in different parts of the world, different time zones, from his living room to, say, my living room as a Canadian studying Korean. And so all of these things, and then the books he talks about, and not just Korean books, but Japanese books, French, Russian, to me it's just fascinating. So while I have trouble understanding it, and I'm picking my way through it, it's like this treasure trove that I know is there for me, and it's just a matter of me fighting my way through it, and learning the words and phrases as I get into what he is sharing with us. And I know that, having now discovered this very interesting content, and I know there's more similar interesting content in Korea from Koreans on different subjects, that Korean, I won't stop my engagement with Korean at the end of my 90-day challenge. It's something that will be with me, and I will continue to be able to enjoy an engagement with Korean just as I enjoy my engagement with Russian, French, Chinese, Japanese, you name it. So